Welcome to another episode of Dog Pound Bear Down with Turban Brothers. I'm your host, Benny, with your co-host, Yogi. Yogi, a lot has changed in the last few weeks. We had a game-winning drive from Sanders. We have a 23 sacks record by Miles and coach being let go. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think first of all, if you're a Browns fan and you're still sticking with us, we're proud of you because this was a tough year for sure.
Tough.
Secondly, take a deep breath if you're a Browns fan because I think by the end of the year we were all pretty wound up. Even with the 2 wins to close out the year, we still fired Stefanski, and I think that said that they had made their decision a few weeks ago, right? Like he wasn't able to necessarily fight his way back into staying as our head coach. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You and I have talked a lot about the deficiencies of the team, the game management issues that we have, the trick plays at like the worst of times. And you look at the season 5-12 with the severe point differential, right? Like severe, one of the worst in the NFL. And so, I heard Nick Saban say it this week actually on the Pat McAfee podcast that, everybody talks about players and coaches and like certain statistics with players or coaches. But for him, one of the biggest things is if your offense cannot score enough points, it will always let a defense down. So we talk about in football, defense wins championships. If your offense is not good enough, it does not matter.
Yep.
And so hearing it come from him, and he was not talking about the Browns, he was actually just talking about the college football playoff teams. I mean, that says a lot, and that's what this season was. We had a top 3 defense. We had Myles Garrett setting the record, as you mentioned. We actually hit on a couple of our rookies. The free agent signing of Malik was exceptional. He played really, really well, but that still wasn't enough. We ended up 5-12 and, at the bottom of a really bad AFC North, probably the worst we've seen our division play, as a whole, with Pittsburgh winning at 10-7 and barely making it in the playoffs by, basically because the Ravens kicker missed the field goal. That's how bad our division was, and we're still the worst in the division. So I think the recap really just, is it was a severely disappointing season. Most analysts, I should say, probably had the Browns at like 7 or 8 wins. We didn't even achieve that. And had we not had the last 2, we would have been a 3-win team. So disappointed, but at least we made a change. I am happy about that. The change with Stefanski and getting him out of here. Again, I don't wish anybody lose their job, but I mean, he had 6 seasons. He had the most leeway of any coach that we've seen in the last 30 years. He just couldn't turn the ship back around. What do you think? Like, how did you feel?
Yeah, the term comes to mind, as you mentioned, disappointed. I know it wasn't going to be a 10-win season or 11-win season, but knowing the defense was top 3 or top 5 in the league, and a lot of influx of new talent coming in on the offense, even though we missed a lot on offensive line and not having a quarterback in place, not having a game plan in place. It was pretty disappointing just to finish 5-12 as a record. We had a great defense. We wasted one of all-time performances by Myles Garrett. And you look at the last 2 games, our defense won us the games. I was happy for Myles setting the record on the last game that was coming close to not happening, and would have been typical Browns thing to happen, like not being able to, register the 23rd sack in the last game, and you have 3 games to go. But yes, from coaching standpoint, one thing I've always been disappointed since this past 6 years is discipline. This team lacks discipline. It lacks fire, especially on the offensive side. Since Jim Schwartz came into the defense, and then he kind of changed the whole scheme. He changed the attitude. We were more aggressive, and we have been top 5 defense 3 out of 4 years with him, right? But on offense, we were always lacking imagination, decent plays. The best we could see is when Baker was here. Besides that, we haven't seen anything besides that flash in the pan with Flacco. And seeing our players going somewhere else, especially Flacco, from here to Cincinnati and throwing for a plethora of touchdowns, it tells us our offense is not imaginative, right? It's not creative enough. And then on top, you're adding defense. Stefanski was widely known as QB whisperer, QB guru, right? an offensive guru. But again, 13 QBs later, he still doesn't have a QB.
Yep.
He had number one pick in Baker Mayfield. He had Watson as a top free agent during that time. He had Flacco as most experienced guy and still failed to deliver on every account. So that is one factor. And then the offense ranking 31st, that's unacceptable, especially from an offensive guru. And that pretty much set the tone for me. Like, you know what, this is for him. This is time. It's time for him to go. We need new thoughts, new ideas, and new energy in the building. And I think I saw it coming, even though at the end of the season we won 2 games. But again, that had nothing to do with our coach. This was definitely Jim Schwartz putting his stamp on the team and saying, like, you know, defense will win even if you offense doesn't even score a touchdown, which was literally what happened. They scored 1 touchdown in the last 2 games. So, yeah, disappointed all across. I was happy for Miles again. I'm going to reiterate that 1,000 times. That record is really, really one of the hardest working athlete accolades you can get, because again, everything else is team dependent. That's you one-on-one against 3 or 4 people, triple team, double teamed all the time, and still getting that. He changed the game in the last 2 games, as you saw, where, you know, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati were more worried about him than actually winning and getting into the playoffs. It almost cost Pittsburgh the season. But yeah, season-wise, it was disappointing. Not much to talk about from offense. Defense was amazing, as has always been the past few years. And yeah, just a letdown. And there's changes on our coaching staff, but looking forward to what new coach can bring in and what we're gonna, you know, finally come up with in terms of our top candidates.
Yeah, and I think we talked throughout the season, and I think if you would have had it your way, Stefanski would have been out first, and if I had it my way, Barry would have been out first. But then we got to the middle of the season, or let's say at least the second half of the season, and I think we would have been happy with both of them being gone, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Now, we were giving Barry credit for this draft, which we heard Haslam do. If you noticed, Haslam did something that leaders in corporate America are often told not to do, which is don't lean heavily on recency bias. So make sure when you're evaluating someone, like if my boss evaluates me, he doesn't do it for 1 quarter. Right? He doesn't do it for 1 trimester. He does it for the course of the year. And the reason being, like, you might have a stellar one portion of it, but you have to look at the totality of it. And I think we were both at the point where, had they both been gone, we would have been relieved. You know, I wouldn't say excited. Again, we don't want people to lose their jobs, but we would have been relieved because it felt like every week was something. Like with the Browns, it was every single week. It was like, we couldn't just have an injury. We had to have an injury, bad weather, Shador going in without having any practice time with the ones. Next week, we'd have Jerry Jeudy drop, some other injury, rotating offensive linemen. The next week, it's like, you know, Barry talks about like how things will settle down and like, you know, they're looking for the second half of the season. And then immediately we'd have some massive change, right? So it went from Pickett, Flacco, Gabriel, Sanders to Pickett being gone before the season even started, even though most of Cleveland media talked about him being the starter. He was gone. Then you got Flacco. Then you trade Flacco in the division, and he goes and balls out because they may have lost those games, but you look at his stats, he played extremely well. Then we put in Stefanski's guy, or at least what Barry and Stefanski said was their guy, and based on the 3rd round pick, mind you, which we're giving Barry a lot of credit, but just to be clear, he drafted 2 quarterbacks this year in 3rd and 5th round. And the 5th round quarterback played better than the 3rd rounder, in my opinion. And both may not be the answer. Well, nobody is sure at this point. So, you know, we talked about a lot of these things. And so I guess I'll round it out by saying, for me, I would have been happier with Barry being out the door, somebody coming in and saying like, hey, Stefanski, we'll give you 1 more year. You know, under a new GM, that GM would then also say, here are the holes that I think you have. You need to fire Bubba Ventrone first. Maybe they let Tommy Rees slide for a year, but they say, I'm going to bring you this type of quarterback. draft, free agency, or Shador, whichever one it would have been. But how do you feel about the fact that Haslam and team decided, like, hey, we're going to keep AB, but Stefanski's going to end up essentially taking the blame for all of these things that have happened, including us not being able to make Deshaun Watson even an average quarterback anymore.
No, that's true. You knew my feelings. I wasn't a big Stefanski fan. Many times I thought he had a lot more potential, but just maybe he was too early to be a coach. He needed to be a little seasoned and offensive coordinator, and then become coach eventually, because many times it happens. You see these young, hot offensive coordinator like become head coaching job. It gets overwhelming. They don't learn properly. Then the ego comes in and whatever. So that aside, you knew my feelings about him, but Barry, his this year draft is like my parlay on FanDuel. It's like I have 10 leg parlay. 90% of the time I miss it. And there's one time I make it and I go like, man, I can do this over and over again. I think that's what Jim Haslam has done. He feels like he has hit his one parlay. He may be able to repeat it again. But again, that's a tall task because that's coming from gambling point of view. You are gambling on AB because this is your more crucial draft. You're putting a new coach in place, letting AB get the new coach, asking him to hit on this parlay again of 10 picks and nail it, which is going to be a really tall task to begin with. If he does, great, but then the coach has to be in sync with him because the coach has to produce results because he can hit on all his drafts. What happens if we go 3-14 again with a new coach? Somebody had like this year they couldn't even stand 5-12. Next year if they go 3-14, so this means next year they have to at least go 500 or maybe 8-9 minimum to save AB's job. So it's a tall task to begin with, and now you're going to keep him. And if you fire him, the new coach is placed in a position where you hire a new GM who didn't have anything to do with the coach. So again, it becomes so confusing, typical Browns thing to do. But again, I can see where he's coming from because he kind of nailed the draft, which again, he didn't because he wasted top 100 pick on a quarterback who he could have gone in fifth round anyways. You have holes in wide receiver. You have holes on offensive line. You don't have a safety. There are plenty of holes you could have addressed with that top 100 pick. But again, we can't go back and change anything because it is what it is at this point. But again, I was surprised keeping Barry, but I see what he's explaining. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense because you fired your coach because you couldn't stand 5-12 record. If that happens, what do you do? Even if Barry nails the draft. So it's a lose-lose situation for him. The only other thing which comes to my mind, the reason they're keeping it, because they knew nobody else would touch the GM job at $80 million and stuck with Watson for next year. So maybe he's like telling him, instead of paying 2 GMs, I'll let him ride this one because no GM will touch this job. And the following year, if you're in the same boat, a new GM can come in with a little bit more cap relief and 1 year of Watson, and who knows what happens then, right? So maybe he doesn't want to have too many people on payroll because he already has Stefanski. He will have another GM. So I think he wants Barry to ride out his Watson contract and see if he can do anything before that. Otherwise, he's probably dead in water as well. So I'm trying really, really hard. I'm trying to squint my eyes and see like whatever he's trying to do is trying to make sense, but it doesn't make sense to most extent. But I'm still trying to justify what Haslam is trying to do. But again, you're going to be in the same boat next year if it doesn't work out because you fired someone for 5-12 record, which is 2-game improvement. What is the expectation that going into next year with a new coach? Is the GM going to stay because if you repeat the same record, or is he going to get fired as well? So again, there are a lot of questions, but that pretty much leads us into our next topic, which is the coaching, right? So that is going to be the linchpin for Browns next season and going forward, because this hire is the most critical in terms of next few years. It's if you have one and done or maybe two and done, you're wasting Miles Garrett years. You're wasting Ward's years. Your defense is old. Right now, you think you have a hole. You have 10 times more holes in 2 years if that doesn't pan out. So they're trying to keep their Super Bowl playoff window open with like minor crack. But I don't know how far it could go because if you don't nail the coach as well as the draft, you're worse than before because now you wasted more years of Miles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Malik Collins is getting old. A lot of defense is getting old. And now you have to fill that while you also have to nail the offense draft as well. So yeah, it's going to be crazy next year. What are your thoughts? Let's dive into our coaching, right? This is a hot topic. Every other day a new coach gets fired from a team. There are a lot of candidates leaving their job because they want to get hired by someone. We just saw Harbaugh getting fired. Yeah, tell us what do you think about the coaching market? What are your top candidates? I'll share my thoughts as well.
Ultimately, that Andrew Berry topic, that AB topic, the reason it irritates me even more now is because it has been a little more chaotic of a, coaching cycle in the sense that, we always have that Black Monday where a number of coaches are fired, but we had some that were fired a couple weeks in advance, right? Like in New York, we had some that were fired the night of the game, like in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And then you had Monday, and then you continue to have like Tuesday firings. And so what my issue ultimately ended up being was, and I know Haslam took offense to the Cleveland media mentioning like, hey, it seems like there's some level of dysfunction, right? But I thought that was real. Unlike when I've made comments about Cleveland media being hard on Miles for no reason. Like I feel like that's just hatred from the Cleveland media. This seemed warranted because even his decision right now is a little chaotic. And I'll tell you how that fits into the coaching part. It's because if you did want to go after a tenured coach like John Harbaugh, John has been in the league for a very long time, has 18 straight seasons with the Ravens, averaging 10 wins a game. If anybody is going to come in and say, hey, I want to pick my own GM, it's going to be a guy like that. And the last person to do it was Sean Payton. So there's a precedent for it. And Sean Payton, Denver actually traded a first and second round pick for. So now we have this opportunity to get a Cleveland guy, mind you, Harbaugh's, have their ties to Cleveland. Mom was, born and raised in Cleveland itself, but they have Ohio as a whole. And you sort of look at it and you go, well, now you hamstrung us. Because if Harbaugh looks at that and says, I don't want to work with Barry, right? Or he says, I don't mind working with Barry, but now he and Barry have like an initial conversation and Harbaugh says, I don't know, in addition to Todd Monken, I want to do X, Y, Z, and there's a disagreement there, we're going to miss out. Yeah. So although he was defensive about this dysfunctional thing, all I could think of was you keeping AB after firing Kevin is the exact chaos everyone talks about with the Browns.
Yeah.
Like 100%. why can't we just have normal, like a normal headline? Yeah. Why do the Browns have to have the weirdest situation in the NFL?
Yeah.
So Harbaugh's obviously my first pick. None of us were thinking about him until he, was let go by the Ravens. We did think about Tomlin because there was talk about Tomlin maybe like stepping away or walking away.
Which could happen. Which could still happen if you lose the playoff.
I think Tomlin's less likely to want to be a Brown coach. He just has no ties. Hardcore Steelers guy. Probably would want to go to totally different conference, quite honestly. Whereas Harbaugh, I think he would at least consider it. He'd say hey, I get to play the Baltimore Ravens twice a year. And he has to look at that firing as unfair. Think about that. The Browns have been back for 30 plus years. You know what fans would do to have 10 wins a season on average? The Browns average between, I think it's 4 wins a season since they came back as a franchise. That's terrible. So if we had a 10 wins per season coach, we wouldn't be firing him. I'm pretty confident. No. The Browns would be like,
we'll make a statue outside.
Yeah, exactly.
You regret firing Marty.
So right after Harbaugh. So Harbaugh's definitely my first choice, and I'm sure that 99% of people would say it. I also will say the Browns are dysfunctional. It's a chaotic organization. A guy that basically automatically jumps to the top of the list for best coaching candidate probably is not choosing the Browns. Also, the same reason we desperately paid Watson like we did, because at the time he was still a top tier quarterback, and he probably wasn't going to choose the Browns either, even with all of his legal problems. So I think that leaves us with the rest of the group, right? And the general consensus is bring somebody in from the outside. My jump, like my second after Harbaugh, is Schwartz.
Yeah.
Talk to Schwartz. He said he's open to it, which I didn't know if he would be, to be honest with you. We had talked about that. Number 2 is Schwartz. And then number 3, I think at this point, you sort of look at like the younger crop of offensive coordinators. I wouldn't want to Clint Kubiak because he's just Kevin Stefanski again. You know what I mean? So we know that's not really, it's not a good fit, at least for the current roster. And again, we have a number of draft picks, but we're not going to fix this offense in one offseason.
Yeah.
So I would really look at like one of the younger guys that, is on the offensive side. To me, it's sort of a wash. You're sort of going to have to just hope to hit a home run with one of the young guys. Only the former Arizona coach, he's the only one with the Cleveland tie out of the group. He was the belle of the ball for coaches the year he got hired in Arizona, if you remember. Cliff Kingsbury's out there. Cliff did a great job with Jaden before Jaden got hurt. He also did an exceptional job with, if you think about it, he actually has ties going back to Kyler and the whole group as well that we've talked about. I'm not saying I have a leading candidate out of the younger OCs, but that would be my third choice. Is if you're not going to get Harbaugh and you're not going to get Schwartz, so you're not getting the 2 veteran. There's one. I'll throw one name out there that I haven't heard. I don't even know if people are considering him at this point or if he's just done with football. But Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz, they were coaches together on the Eagles Super Bowl team. And he's somebody I would consider because they have a great working relationship already. I don't know if Schwartz will want to work for him again, but if he would be okay with that. Peterson is another veteran. Again, I don't hear his name coming up, but I was sort of looking up like, hey, who does Andrew Berry have ties with that Schwartz also has ties with? And Doug Peterson's one of the guys. Now, he was fired from the Eagles because he had one bad season. But then he went to that dysfunctional Jacksonville organization and he didn't do well there. So I understand the hesitation. But yeah, at least for me, like those are the sort of the coaches I've been thinking about. I just think Harbaugh's a long shot. Otherwise, I would not have another name. I would just say Harbaugh for sure. But right after Harbaugh, why not keep Schwartz? Why not keep Schwartz and say like, hey, it's not working on offense. We'll get you the players this year on offense. You decide who you want to be the OC, install. Like, it's not like he doesn't know offenses, right? And that's like sort of misconception too, I think people have, where it's like, if you're that good at defense, that means you know what the offense is doing, and that's how you're stopping them.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like he wouldn't understand, like, okay, in modern NFL, this is the type of offense we want to run. Let him make that choice. If he wants to fire Reese, then that's his choice, right? Quite frankly, keeping Reese a little concerning if they do that, because I don't know. I could be wrong about this, but I don't know how different his system would become given that he's already experienced this, the season with the Browns with the roster current system. So Harbaugh, Schwartz, and then it's probably just whoever they assess as the best candidate out of the young offensive coordinators. But what about you? What do you think about like on the coaching side? What would you like to see happen? And then, who are sort of the guys you're thinking of?
So right off the bat, we have 7 openings in NFL. Right. And if you look at it, you have Giants with Jackson Dart. Right. You have Vegas with maybe Mendoza. Right. That's an attractive opportunity. You have Tennessee with Ward. That's another attractive opportunity. Then now you have Lamar and Raven. That's another opportunity. Atlanta has a great owner, and they have, Cousins as well as, what's the name? Penix Jr. That's a great opportunity. And even Murray, Arizona, great place. Many people want to live, especially older coaches. And top 5 picks, or third pick they have, if I'm not mistaken. So competition for Browns is like through the roof. I don't see anybody just saying, wow, I'm going to leave all these great opportunities, quarterbacks, and I'm going to pick Browns where we have Sanders or Deshaun Watson and no chance of getting the top 3 pick. And even if you do, you have to trade plethora of picks, which is pretty much mortgaging your future again and not getting anything in return. Wow. So right off the bat, I think it's the least desirable spot, I would say. So personally, if I want a coach, you nailed it, Jim Harbaugh, a seasoned veteran who has won more than 150 games, I would say, and won a Super Bowl, knows like a leader of men, disciplined, special teams, which we definitely need help with, could probably add value, offense and defense, just a perfect coach. If Browns can do what Jaguars did, sacrifice their GM like they did with Liam Cohen, I think Haslam should 110% think about it. If you have to get rid of Barry to get Jim Harbaugh here, give him all the power or whoever he want to work with, do it. So that is my number one candidate. Number two candidate, as you alluded to, 100% Jim Schwartz. The guy has paid his dues, experience. The only thing which has saved our season this year to some extent was our defense. Everything has been disarray. Our special teams has been in disarray. Our offense has been disarray. And like a beacon of hope is our defense. Nothing you can talk about that defense, which you can say, you know what, they didn't do their job in any of the games. So you know what? He checks all the boxes. He's experienced. He has led top 5 defense. And, you know, a guy who has been in the league forever. And you just alluded to, he knows offense really well as well because he prepares for him day in, day out, right? So all the other candidates, it's going to be paying an arm and a leg and just trying to get him. It's going to be, I guess, another 2-year reset. They'll give him a couple of years and then they will fire him again because next year Barry's gone, then the new GM come in. GM will give him 1 year and then they will fire. So it's a 2-year reset with any other coach, I would say. The only two coach which can last is one, Harbaugh, and two, Jim Schwartz. So that's why when we talked about how critical it is you have a coach in house who has a solid resume. Among all this dysfunction you earlier talked about, his shirt is clean. He has nothing on his resume which can say, you know what, during his stay here, we were bad at this or we were bad at that. Last year, you saw the camp wasn't ran properly the way he would like, and he was disappointed. He said straight out, this year is a down year for defense because the success has gone to their head, and exactly that happened. He was on record speaking to Aditi on a post-game comment in a preseason that this year is going to be a tough year because the success has gone to our head. And that's exactly what happened. He knows exactly how what it takes to win and how a team should prepare. His team, his defense doesn't like discipline. If it does, he calls them out. Recently, Denzel Ward and also Myles Garrett and everybody on the team were raving about him that he deserves an opportunity, which means your own team. And Denzel Ward said, we need a leader of men who is disciplined and who holds players accountable, which means he's doing that on defense. So he is the ultimate candidate besides Jim Harbaugh, and unless Mike Tomlin gets available. But any other person I'm saying is a 2-year reset because, again, they're coming in a difficult situation. They might get backing or may not because, again, if the guy who's hiring them is gone, they're pretty much toast also. So any other coach is just a short gap fill coaching. I would say Peterson is a great choice. Brian Flores probably won't pick this place. Again, he clashes with Jim, so you have to sacrifice one or the other. And a lot of offensive coaches, again, they're young, second opportunity. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable. Again, since it's really critical because you have 2 to 3 years max of Myles Garrett or Denzel Ward before they are old. So we don't have time is against us. I think having the right coach next year is going to set you up for next 5 to 10 years. And if you mess that up, you are pretty much looking at a complete reset. Even nailing the next draft won't help you because if you don't have the right coach, you don't have the right winning habits. And if you don't have the right winning habits, great draft. So those are my only two candidates. 3 with Mike Tomlin if he gets fired. If not, those are my top 2 candidates. The rest are like, okay, yeah, you're going to come in and, maybe a scapegoat for next in 2 years when you move to Brook Park with a new stadium, because then you probably look for a new coach and new GM and a new number one pick. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's a part of what Haslam is thinking. You mentioned the salary cap part of it. I think they could figure that out. And when I say figure it out, I mean it's still going to be a burden, but I think they can figure it out enough. If you actually look, the Browns aren't even the worst salary cap situation for next year.
Yeah.
I think they're like bottom 10, but they're not the worst or even close to the bottom. But I think Haslam may be thinking about like, hey, I don't need to do that right now. When I make the move, then I can do a little more of the severe wholesale cleaning of house. And then you mentioned like, hey, even hitting the draft, next year it won't necessarily turn this into a playoff team by itself. So with that in mind, I mean, Shador is our starter for the end of the year. You have Deshaun coming back for sure because he was somewhere in between towards the end of the year. Here, what's your take on Shador being our starter for the future? Do we look to draft a quarterback? How are you feeling about that? Because we've both sort of taken that roller coaster ride with him, where I don't think either of us necessarily wanted to draft him, at least not early. Then he fell, and we're like, hey, that's a steal of a pick in the fifth round. Then we were frustrated because he wasn't getting a chance, and everyone else that did sucked in this offense.
Yeah.
And then he did the best he could, and he got a couple wins, but I don't know. Where are you at with Shador? Is he the Browns' answer at quarterback? Do we go into next season with him? Because we have 2 first-round picks this year. If you're ever going to make a move for a quarterback in the draft, it's probably a year where you have 2 firsts to move up with.
Yeah. No, really good question. We could go for the first round pick, but again, we put that new quarterback at disadvantage because now you don't have the key players on offense, such as wide receivers, offensive line, and now your running back is going to be, little Ginger coming back. Maybe he's, still getting back from his rehab, may not be at, full go right off the bat. So you're putting the new quarterback at disadvantage, and with a new coach, new system, and it might not pan out or may pan out, because if that doesn't work out, you're firing the coach, and then your new coach picks up it becomes too complicated. The way I would want to have it, you have a bridge, $80 million bridge in Watson. Use it. You're not getting rid of it. Barry already said it on record that he will be part of the roster next year. So use him as a bridge. Sanders, the whole offseason, let him grow, let him learn, then evaluate him, put some pieces around him, and then see what happens, right? Mostly from draft, maybe get some offensive weapons from outside and see what he does, what he turns into. And if he does, boom, that's a win. If he doesn't, you give him first half of the season, then bring Watson back into the later half. What else do you have to lose? We have seen Watson, be in this offense, stale offense, I would call it. We have seen Flacco in this stale offense. We have seen Gabriel in the stale offense, as well as Shador, and none of them have paid dividend. So now we're doing a design of experiment where we are changing one variable at a time, right? Before we kept changing all the quarterbacks. Now we took the offensive coach and offensive calling out. So let's see him with a new offense scheme and how he pans out. Maybe there's something you can, I've seen Rodgers, who's 42 or so, still be serviceable and lead his team to playoff. Why can't a 29-year or 28-year or whatever Watson age is right now, or 30, could do that? Be the bridge quarterback, right? And if both Sanders and Watson don't work out, draft a new QB. At least the new QB who comes in 2027 season has some weapons with him, some semblance of offense he can be successful with. Because right now, I don't see any new QB coming in, because not only they have to learn the system, it's a new system they're going to come from college, and it's going to be an uphill battle for them to begin with, because your line is going to be gelling in first few weeks, or maybe it takes 4 or 6 games, and then you're taking punishment from the opposing defense. It's just you're wasting another career. So why not use Sanders, who has shown flash and pan occasionally, like taking the team down with pretty much nobody. Jerry Jeudy as a as a main wide receiver who's considered second on this team, to be honest, if there was a legit number one, and took this team to the 30-yard line in a game-winning drive and got the win. Why not give him a chance, you know? And I think that's our best way out because then next year, $80 million are off the cap. There's another 30 to 40 million left, which is much more breathing room. You can spend more money for a new quarterback if you're going into 2027 season and you still think you need a new quarterback. So I personally think keep this quarterback as it is. Bring in, if you want to draft a quarterback, draft later in the round. The guy from Ole Miss, I forgot the gentleman's name. Trinidad Trinidad Chambliss. He seems legit unless somebody takes him in earlier drafts. You can draft him late, but you are not in a position to draft a quarterback in first two picks or even mortgage your future because you have already mortgaged your future. You can't mortgage a mortgaged future to begin with. So this is like doubling down on stupidity, but Browns are known for that. So I wouldn't be surprised. But I would personally say, hey, sometimes play it safe. It's better to put some weapons around. When was the last time we drafted a wide receiver in the first round? It's been ages. I know quarterback you don't do besides Baker in the last 20 years, but when was the last time we drafted a wide receiver? We need a number one wide receiver. We need a number one tackle before you even think about quarterback, because otherwise it's just a pinata back there just getting hit over and over again, and just you're going to lose the confidence. And then it's going to turn another Tim Couch or Baker Mayfield or whoever. The list is like 43 quarterbacks already, so maybe 50. I don't know. Who's counting?
You brought up Couch at the end there, and it just reminded me that I was listening to Bruce Arians talk, and he mentioned Couch, and he basically said Couch was one of the most talented quarterbacks he ever coached. And the whole problem for Couch was just the team.
Yeah.
He was on an awful team. And to hear him say that Couch was one of the, because I gave Couch a lot of crap when I was younger for the whole crying incident and all the things that he sort of like, he just didn't come across as like tough. And he said he was the toughest quarterback he had ever been around. It was just that he was battered and broken and beaten from all the sacks that he took. He was like the only other person I was ever around that took so many sacks, was, Peyton Manning. Peyton took a lot of sacks, early in his career too. So we sort of have this history, of even if you have a quarterback in-house that could be good, really not knowing what to do with that person. And then you talk about not drafting a first-round pick that's a receiver. I mean, Corey Coleman was the last guy I remember us drafting. Absolute bust of a receiver. And maybe they were gun-shy after that. But I can't even think of somebody before that. Like I mean, maybe we've in the 80s or 70s or whatever.
Yeah.
But at least in my lifetime, I just don't. I don't remember who would have been another wide receiver. I'll have to check after we talk, but I say that also because you reflect on this year's draft class, and we were talking about Travis Hunter, and once we gave up on him, we still could have drafted a receiver. I mean, Tet went really high. So I live in Charlotte. Tet is somebody that the Rams tried to trade for. They gave him a huge trade offer to try to get up the Carolina spot and pick him. And you saw the year that McMillan had. He changed Bryce Young, in my opinion, between them fixing the offensive line, Rico Dowdle having a good year. It was really having a trustworthy receiver that made the difference for him. And then, the other receiver that we saw this year, I mean, he went and played with Baker, and he absolutely balled out at Mecca's. We had our chances and we missed it, is my point. Yeah. And that's why I still harp on the like, would you rather have Mason Graham or would you rather have a Mecca?
Yeah.
For me, it's easy. Yeah, it's easy. What I will say is AB and team this year seemed to scout better because they did hit on a couple. And you called out the fact that Quinshawn won't be necessarily ready. I don't think he will be. I mean, I understand people are like breathing a sigh of relief because he didn't tear anything in his knee, but dislocating your ankle and breaking your leg is still a long recovery process. Yeah. And the mental part of it is still the same, which is like you have to get to a point where you trust your leg. So I think we may have like an additional spot to think about. I don't know that we're drafting any more running backs. I'm just saying we may need to, through free agency or some other method, have a stopgap running back for whoever's going to play quarterback next year. And quite honestly, like I had said it, I didn't want Shedeur playing this year because I didn't know what it was going to mean, right? And I, we texted back and forth, and I sent you the stats and the PFF, and it looks awful on paper, but he still won. So, for me, I don't want to get rid of him. I don't want to trade him.
3 and 4,
But I also, I still go back to the fact that, like, I just want him to learn. Like, why does everything have to be chaotic with the Browns? Why can't we have him next year sit behind Watson? If you don't believe in Watson, you are going to have some free agent options or trade options for veteran quarterbacks as well. But my point being, don't blow the draft picks on quarterback. We are not going to land Mendoza no matter what. And then most likely Dante will go second overall because the Jets need a quarterback too. So you're not getting one of the top tier quarterbacks, that all of them have risk, but they would have the least amount of risk. And you'd have Watson and Shador and Gabriel. Gabriel as a 3, I'm fine with. Like, I would never balk at that. Like, that's totally fine. Like, I think that's where he belongs. And maybe one day he's a number 2.
Yeah.
Shador is a 2, and maybe one day he's a 1. At least he showed the willpower, the mental strength through all the nonsense to win some games with this team. Because what he didn't do was he didn't have a 4-interception game. He had 1 3-interception game, recovered from it, and that was it. But he sort of showed, like, hey, especially I think the last 2 were like 1 interception and 0. But he sort of showed, like, hey, I won't lose you the game. Like, I'll try to make plays. I'll stay within the system. We did hear him call a couple routes, so I think he got frustrated probably with the play calls and was just like, hey, Isaiah, run this, or Judy, run this, because there's audio of that, of him just saying, like, hey, run this route. And by the way, the one that he called was a touchdown. So I don't have an issue with it. I'm just saying that's usually like you're now playing out of the system. But on the positive, we saw him make adjustments to the line, to, ultimately to the protections in the way that you want. So there's enough there, is my point. Keep Watson, keep Sanders, even keep Gabriel if you feel he's comfortable as 3.
Yeah.
And then I would see what Indy does with Daniel Jones. Maybe they don't want to pay Daniel, and they have to pay Jonathan Taylor, and they have to pay their number 1 receiver. I think they'll keep him, but if they don't, before he got hurt, he was having a really good year. I wasn't a fan of him before, but I'm just saying, like, we're talking about stopgap guys, right? Guys that just can manage the game with an exceptional defense. I do worry about Denzel, and the reason I say that is, 1, I want to make sure I say I've never been happy with how Cleveland media treats Denzel. It's a lot like Miles, where they're just unappreciative. But he did have some rough games. And if you think about that busted coverage that cost us a game a few games ago, I like the bravado of saying, like, how dare you try me 3 plays in a row? But that was the reason they did it. That's the reason the Steelers went after him, is because just a couple games before, he had a busted coverage, and that cost the Browns a game. So I worry about Denzel, and I think Tyson Campbell was a great trade. Talk about night and day difference between Greg Newsome and Tyson. It is huge. So I would use those picks on an offensive tackle, on a receiver, in the first round at least. Like, those are the 2 positions I would target. And if you have to move around to make that work, that's okay. Do it. Drop that. If you trade back from that 6th spot and you still get a tackle and a receiver, I'm good with it.
That's a win.
Because you might say, like, hey, there's nobody worth it. I think the Alabama tackle Proctor is the number 1 prospect, but maybe by that time it changes. Maybe, the Browns say, like, hey, we don't believe in that person to put a 6th overall pick. Fine, trade back, stay in the first round. Let me make it clear. Stay in the first round, but pick your guy, just like you did with Carson. Right? I don't think anybody had Carson penciled into us. They had Carson. He was one of the pre-draft profiles for the ClevelandBrowns.com site, but nobody had him penciled in where we picked him. But they went with their guy at that point. Do that again. If you have your guys at tackle, at receiver, make those picks. So I'm with you. I thought we would be, in different spots on this one, but I think we're in the same exact spot, which is let Watson start, let him play. Or if Sanders beats him out, that's okay too. Like, if he beats him out in training camp with the new coach, he earned her, like, in my opinion. But I would rather not see, because like you said earlier, and which was something for me to question out loud, we're not going to fix the team in one draft, right? We're not fixing the offense in one draft. We don't have any massive losses to free agency this year, so that's good. So that should keep the defense whole. But if we can hit on, look at what the Bears did with Caleb this year by getting him some linemen. He already had the receivers, mind you, right? He had 2 number 1 receivers there already. And then you look at, like, what Drake May had happened with him, because he didn't have Diggs. If you think about it, as much as Diggs may be a problem off the field, that made a big difference. Like, having a true number 1, you could see it. Good coach, first of all. They got the coach right, and they got him some help. So whoever's going to play quarterback next year, they're going to have a little bit of a struggle. And I'm with you. Like, don't waste the pick. Get the offensive skill players we need. We probably need 2 wide receivers and 3 3 linemen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And not all we can't get them all through the draft, so it's going to be a mix. But make those picks and don't waste any of them. And I'm with you on Chambers. Like, if he doesn't get the extra year eligibility he's looking for, he's automatically in the draft. He's probably not even a first rounder by most evals. I mean, unless he just balls out for the rest of this playoff, then they might change the story. Yeah, then that's different. But otherwise, I mean, he's probably an early second rounder. Just looking at it right now, might be a great spot to take a quarterback like him. You're going to stash him too. I just want to make it clear, like, I wouldn't want to throw him out there to the Wolves right away. But yeah, that would be the only case where I'd say go after a quarterback is if you're going in the second round or later, and it's just a guy you can't pass up, like we did with Shedeur this year. He was in the 5th round. But that 3rd round pick, like, I would take that back in a heartbeat. Pick somebody else.
Could have done
pick
so
a
much.
guard. You know what I mean?
Well,
I think
they're pretty bad with offensive line.
There was 8, if I'm remembering correctly. I'll have to Google it, but I think 8 rookie offensive linemen started all 17 games. I'm sure at least a couple of those guys were available in the 3rd round when we took game early. You know what I mean?
No. 1,000%.
Yeah, I would have rather make that.
One thing I do want to mention is what we haven't given Deshaun Watson either, a number 1 threat. Since he came here, he had Amari Cooper, who was dropping balls in the end zone left and right, even in the bombs.
And already aged.
And then you got, what's our other friend's name? Judy, who couldn't even catch. So, who couldn't even get open. So, even if you go back with a new offensive corner, just having an explosive number 1, I want to see. I'm actually excited to see what Deshaun and Shedeur can do, because you just mentioned it changed the Carolina quarterback. I forgot his name, Bryce Young career by putting a number 1 legit next to him. He can actually throw the ball. Same thing happened to Burrow when Jamar Chase showed up. Learning curve went exponential. It just went from like, okay, I can't complete, I have to run around and make plays, to, you know what, I'm going to throw at him with my eyes closed and I trust him, he's going to catch it. So that changes a lot in any quarterback. And we have seen throughout history is every quarterback needs a number 1. Like during May, you put Stephon Diggs, and last game of the season or the second last game of the season, they needed 4th and 1. He throws the ball is far, it looks like a great throw, but Stephon Diggs makes an amazing catch and pulls the ball in and gets the first down, game over. So that's what a quarterback needs, is a friend who the person can trust. Shedeur can't even trust Jerry Jeudy with like his money, so it's crazy. So some of these quarterbacks, their next step is having that go-to receiver, which we have seen pretty much every big player has, right? Every big quarterback has. I haven't seen that with Browns for a long, long time. Even when we had what's the name, Baker Mayfield. We had Landry, who was declining, and then we had Odell running freestyle routes in the back. So having number 1 factors in. Like you saw, Baker's learning curve went from exponential just with having Mike Evans right next to him, because he knows his radius is so big, he just needs to throw the ball around him. That gives you that blanket to get away from jams, right? When there's like a punch time, you can throw the ball and trust your guy can make it. So we need that regardless for Deshaun, Sanders, or number 1 could pick going forward in the future quarterback. We need that number 1 pick. Until you have that, I think this offense will never be explosive as we wanted to believe. So that's something which is holding this offense back, the number 1 threat.
I mean, I hate to bring Joe Flacco back up, but if you think about it, Harbaugh won with Flacco, and what they talk about is Flacco, like Trent Dilfer, like he's sort of not given the full credit, even though, to be fair, he was the Super Bowl MVP of the Super Bowl they won. He's not always given credit. They first talk about the Ravens Hall of Fame defense, right? And then they talk about Flacco and then the rest of the team. But Flacco had Anquan Boldin, and Trent Dilfer had Shannon Sharp, one of the best tight ends ever played the game. So, to your point, even the guys that make it and win a Super Bowl but aren't considered It's not Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. It's not Tom Brady with Randy Moss. Even the guys that are like game manager types. And I hate to use that because Cam Newton sort of blew that all up, right? But the ones that are more game manager types, they still have number ones.
Yeah.
Because
you need one.
You can be a decent quarterback only if you have one.
Yep.
And in the modern NFL, there's a reason why this all changed. If you remember, the Browns had and I think I talked about this, I can't remember when, but the Browns had an opportunity to draft Julio Jones. And when we didn't, I lost my shit because I knew that Dimitrov, who's down in Atlanta, understood, look, hey, the rules are changing. The game is leaning towards allowing more points, letting teams win with receivers and passing. Browns instead gave up the pick and they took Julio. Julio had a Hall of Fame career. We were right there, by the way, 2 drafts. Like instead we had, who do we have? We had Donovan People-Jones and like random, so I just say like we are making and we've made the same mistakes over and over again. I would rather swing and miss. Now, do I want to draft another Coleman? Of course not. But the truth was, even in that draft, nobody was putting Coleman in that spot. That GM just thought like he had a harebrained idea and went with it. And obviously it backfired. So I think just don't do the chaotic thing, Browns. Like it's not that hard. Sense. Like use some common sense. Again, like we can't seem to get away from that for whatever reason. And sometimes, like I have a friend that always talks like whatever he talks about like blank Twitter, right? Like on a scale of like 0 to Browns Twitter, most of us are probably in the middle. Like we're not losing our shit. We're just saying like, hey, I don't want to burn my jerseys. Like I just bought this Schlesinger jersey, right? Like I don't want to burn my jerseys.
Yeah.
I just want you to use common sense and draft. And I use common sense and pick a coach.
Yeah.
But we have a hard time doing it. And unfortunately, Haslam's move for me, like, made me feel like we're still doing it. Like the fact that he was just like, all right, I'm going to hold on to AB. And then he spent like 10 minutes explaining why, because AB did this, just in the past year, I'm keeping him. I'm sitting there going, what about all the other stuff? Are you saying like he wasn't involved? That's none of it's his fault. Yeah. By the way, he still drafted Dylan Gabriel. Like all these things are like crossing your mind as a Browns fan. And I think Browns fans they deserve some common sense at this point. And I think everything you and I have talked about today, at least, feels like anyone that's outside of the Browns fandom would be like, yeah, why wouldn't you do those things? Like, why wouldn't you, why wouldn't you throw the Brinks truck at John Harbaugh and bring him in? Why wouldn't you keep Schwartz as DC? Why wouldn't you keep the quarterbacks you have and then draft an O-line and get the quarterback some real receivers? Seems really straightforward. If you fail when you try something straightforward, it's okay. Like, that's all right. I talked about it. Like, my boss wouldn't be pissed if I did the thing that made sense and I didn't work. But if I did something that made, like, he looked at it and he's like, that's nonsense. Why the hell would you do that? Then he is going to be like, you obviously don't know what you're doing. But Browns fans have a lot of trauma. Let's be honest. We have a lot of trauma. So, we're willing to hang in there, but they have to show us some common sense this offseason. Yeah.
We got to say, hey, Haslams, you got 2 Turban brothers who can run your franchise better than you can. Just hire us, man. We'll not even charge you money. We'll do it for free at this point. It's pretty common sense things you have to do. Not even, be Einstein in this case. But again, common sense is not so common, I guess they say. Not for Browns at all. Well,
that's right. Well, we'll still be here next season, right?
Yeah.
I was going to say, we're still going to be here next season, right? It'll be the same Browns, same stress. And we'll have the same hope for absolutely no reason.
We're making same common, suggestions, which anybody can make and think of and go like, hey, it's reasonable. Again, this is Browns. This is what we have lived all our life as a Browns fan. So I guess we will leave it to that. Again, great chatting with you, Yogi, as always. Great ideas, great thoughts. This has been wonderful conversation. Blew off some steam. Definitely helped. Let's see what happens. Let's see how far this coaching search goes and what dumb decisions are in our near future. But anyways, hopefully this time is it. We turn the ship around. So go Browns.